Autumn is a student at North Carolina UNC Wilmington. She's in the School of Social Work and plans to graduate in 2015. She's also an honor student. And let me tell you about her organization called Operation Restoration. The purpose is to bring awareness of sex trafficking in the United States and to make a difference in the lives of survivors and overcomers. Operation Restoration serves as a hub for making teens and young adults aware of what sex trafficking in here in the United States, and through that awareness make a difference in the lives of survivors and overcomers. Thank you. In addition, it acts as a buffer between public and safe homes to give donations to help meet the needs of the house, as well as to bring awareness of the house and safety for them throughout this country. And so we wanted to make sure that Autumn was here so you can see young people being involved. And actually, I'd like to start with Autumn. Autumn, would you just share with us how you decided to start your own organization and give us a little history about yourself, please? We only have one microphone, so we'll be sharing that. We're just glad to be here. Would you pass that?
I'm so excited to be here today. I'm actually missing class at this moment to be here. But I don't know how many of y'all have to do a senior project in high school in order to graduate. In Jackson County, we do. So Operation Restoration was actually my senior project. And originally I heard about human trafficking from an organization called Love 146, and they focus primarily on human trafficking overseas and safe homes overseas. And my teachers challenged me, and they said, does this happen in North Carolina? And I don't know how many of you remember the Shania Davis case, that happened a couple years ago. And her mother was actually charged with trafficking her to pay off a drug debt. And that sparked my interest, and I'm like, why is nobody doing anything to stop this? You know, it's happening in my own backyard, and I actually heard a story about the high school that I lived right up the street from, not 5 minutes, where there was a girl that was trafficked by her own mother to pay off her house debt. So what I really wanted to do with Operation Restoration is I wanted to be someone that was going to go out there and do something. You know, I can't just let this happen and nobody know about it. I will talk to anybody about human trafficking. It's come up in all of my classes, from sign language to my religion class to all of my social work classes. So everybody in the School of Social Work knows about human trafficking now because of me. But my main goal for Operation Restoration is to let y'all know that you can make a difference. You know, age is just a number. I was 16 when I started this, and I'm 19 now. And it's the best thing that I've ever done with my life, and it's definitely shaped how I've gone through this and what I want to do forever. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Barnes, as I shared with you earlier, we'll be very close for the next couple of minutes. As I share with you, works and talks often about the internet safety. And since Autumn shared about her involvement and wanted everybody to know, we want to make sure that Nima can tell you, Ms. Burns can tell you many things that you can do on the internet to get involved, but she can also tell you lots of things you can do to get in a lot of trouble as well. And so I'm going to give her the microphone for her to share what she's involved in and just some little tips, and I'll ask her some questions. So we'll have a dialogue probably for the next 5 minutes, guys.
Somebody save me.
Go ahead.
Okay, so she says, what do I actually do? Large majority of it is not what I'm doing right now. In my capacity at the North Carolina Department of Justice, I'm tasked with going out and doing presentations on child internet safety along with a myriad of other issues. However, we do not actually do these presentations for young people. I don't want to say children, because does anybody in here really feel like a child? One person. So nobody really feels like a kid, but usually when we do these presentations, we do it at parent-teachers associations, civic groups, other government entities, religious institutes, a lot of nonprofits. So a lot of times we don't give this to students. This is actually the first time, so you all are my guinea pigs when we get to talk about child internet safety. As far as where I come from, the three major things that we point out that can happen on the internet are: one, sexual solicitation, unwanted exposure to unwanted material, and then last but not least is threats of harassment. And cyberbullying actually follows under threats and harassment, and the human trafficking component actually falls under sexual solicitation. So as things are changing in North Carolina, as laws are changing, we're working on this presentation, and we're really trying to work to bring it to high schools now. I have been to Southeast Raleigh, I've spoken with your parents before, and there is a need there. So I do hope that I have the opportunity to talk to you all again in a little bit more formal setting and give a presentation to you all, and you all can really be my kids.
I have a couple other questions. What can students do to aid in reducing victimization amongst our peers as it pertains to child internet safety? What can the students do to aid in reducing victimization among our peers as it pertains to child internet safety?
Okay, I think Holly made a really good point earlier when she was talking about the individual that came up to her. She was not drugged into a car, she was not taken away. It was somebody who just walked up to her in the mall. Does anybody, if I were to say something like, just say no, what would that make you think of? Drugs. Okay, if I was to say booze or the loser, click it or ticket, who knows what those things are about? Drunk driving. Does anybody know what the campaign is for child internet safety? We don't have one. We do not have one. There's no big push. Nobody's pushing a big campaign. And it's not that we don't care. I mean, my generation, we were hit with, only you can prevent forest fires. This is your brain on drugs, or somebody fried an egg. So we had all these commercials when I was a kid, but you all don't have anything. You have nothing at all. So what I need, her question is so timely, I'm counting on you all, because there's going to be no commercial that goes across the television tomorrow that tells you that you should not abuse people on the internet. Now here's what the problem is. How many people know what they want to be when they grow up? That's wonderful. How many people want to kill people? Nobody in this room except for that one child, and I hope the counselor is watching. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. Guess what? Every time somebody gets bullied on the internet and you like it, it's like you standing on top of them and kicking them in the throat. Now, I don't think there's such thing as a fair fight, but does anybody think 10-on-1 is okay? No. How do you feel about 1,000-on-1? It's not okay. So the more you like things, the more power you give to the bully, the more power you take away from the victim. And like Holly said, predators are looking for people who actually are in a really bad place. Every time you take a photo of somebody and you share it, that person is in a really bad place. And you know what? These predators, they're looking for that person. They're watching. They know that you said this person is ugly. They know that you said this person is stupid. They're going to find this photo. If you don't believe me, I've been doing this since 2008 in our office. You would not believe it's not the cheerleader, it's not the quiet kid. It is the kid that gets picked on, and that is the kid that gets picked up. So just because you're not the one doing the bullying, that has nothing to do with anything. Every time you instigate, you bring that person closer and closer to being human trafficked, to being stalked, to being abused, to being cyberbullied. So you might think, I'm not the one doing it. You put fuel to the fire. So the big thing I want you all to do, these are the main things. I want you all not to instigate. That is so huge. How many people would like to have power taken away from them? Nobody does. Where's that strange kid? He got real quiet, didn't he? No, because nobody likes to have power taken away from them. And then number two, I need you all to be my voice. I can't go to every school. There are a lot of schools in North Carolina. If you see something happening to someone, you need to speak up on their behalf. And then the third thing, go to a trusted adult. I know that is really, really hard. How many people like to talk to their parents? I'm grown, I don't tell my parents nothing. So nobody likes to talk to their parents, but I need you to find a trusted adult to talk to. And everyone's been watching the news lately. We saw about that big, that Instagram case that's been going on. That was because somebody was brave enough to go to their parent, and that's what I need you all to be. Be brave enough to go to your parent or to go to another adult. And the thing is, and last but not, I see some parents in the audience, parents, do not take it personal when your children do not come to you. It has nothing to do with you. If you think, oh, my child thinks I'm square and I'm going to go down there and embarrass them, your child could be like me. I didn't want my mama to go to jail. See, my mom was the type of person, if somebody picked on me, she would wait for them at 3 o'clock. And so this is my way of saving my mom from going to jail. So don't take it personal. Like I said, find a trusted adult, do not instigate and do not pass these messages along. I'm gonna pass the mic back and then we'll talk about some of the laws that you all might break, but we're gonna save that for later.
The next question I'd like to ask is to Holly Austin Smith. And Holly shared with you her new book title called Walking Pray. Would you tell us a little bit about your book? And while you're talking about your book, Holly, share with us some of the tactics that you know that are taking place as scouts are going to the mall as well as to the sporting events as well. And then we'll let Autumn address that as well if she knows some additional things about it. Thank you.
So I started writing Walking Pray, I think in 2012. I started sharing my story in 2009 and 2010 and 2011, and it was very slow at first. I was really kind of shy and embarrassed still to share my story. But as I gained confidence on stage, I was hearing the same questions over and over each time I spoke from community members. And a lot of times the questions were like, why did I talk to a stranger? And why didn't I run away from the motel once I understood what they intended to do with me? Why didn't I try to contact anybody to help me? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? And so I started to feel less and less like a victim with all of these questions because I felt like people were projecting the blame onto me for my choices or my lack of action to help myself. And so I became very, I guess, inspired to share my story and to put it down on paper to help people understand that children who are trafficked are victims. They should not be blamed for anything they did or did not do. It's an adult who is controlling them and manipulating them. So in Walking Pray, I do share my story throughout the book, but I also discuss predisposing factors, I discuss community risk factors, I discuss not putting the responsibility on victims. I have very specific tips for teachers, for parents, for service providers and law enforcement. And I talk a little bit about efforts for advocacy and prevention. And like Rika had said about reaching out to you guys and asking you to help spread the word on sexual assault and internet safety, I would like to do the same when it comes to child sex trafficking in the United States. You know, the anti-smoking campaign really skyrocketed when students got involved with that campaign. And now everyone knows that message, and it's really become pretty uncool to smoke because this message has made it all across the internet and on TV. So I'm hoping that, I think it's going to be the next generation. I think it's going to be you guys that create campaigns for this specific exploitation and really make a difference. I think she summed it up pretty well. The thing I believe is definitely investing in the next generation. Like you guys, I mean, even I'm included in, I guess, this generation. We're going to be the ones to make a difference in this world. We're the ones that are going to be changing things. You know, if you don't like the way that things are right now, then let's stand up and do something to change them.
Our students are here, and I'd like to reintroduce to the students that just arrived, Mr. Kenneth Morris Jr. Mr. Kenneth Morris Jr. is the president of Frederick Douglass Initiative. Both of his great ancestors were history makers who paved the way for many African Americans. Frederick Douglass freed himself from chains of slavery to become a great orator, author, journalist, statesman, and diplomat. Called the father of the civil rights movement, Frederick Douglass is credited with successfully urging Abraham Lincoln to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. Booker T. Washington had a vision of equal education for the African Americans when he established Tuskegee Institute, a land-grant school that had become one of America's most prestigious historically black colleges. He also founded the National Business League and was advisor to President Theodore Roosevelt. Kenneth Morris Jr. is a popular keynote speaker who has spoken to numerous middle and high school students across the United States, providing an empowering message of anti-slavery and overcoming insurmountable obstacles. He is the great-great-great-grandson of Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass once said, "It is easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men." Mr. Kenneth Morris Jr. And I'd like for him to summarize some of the things that he shared with us while you were in another class. And then we'll have several questions for Mr. Morris. And then if there's time, if you have a couple of questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to do so. We have some paper. If you'll raise your hand, we'll get someone to come and to give you that sheet of paper, and we will ask Mr. Morris that question. Particularly, I was told that in this, at the school here, that some of you have been studying Mr. Frederick Douglass in your history class. So if you do have some questions that you'd like to engage Mr. Morris, please raise your hand, and we'll get some paper and pencil to you so you can ask that question. Mr. Morris, you can just share some things with the students about your involvement in human trafficking and all those things.
Our organization brings human trafficking prevention, education, curricula into secondary schools. And we've been doing that since 2007 with the idea that we focus mainly in underserved areas where young girls are most vulnerable to becoming victims of sex trafficking. So we can provide these young ladies with information that's going to help protect them and also be able to empower them to affect change in their communities, and also to be able to recognize when their peers might be in trouble. The other part of our curriculum has to do with teaching young boys about demand for sex trafficking. And we're talking to boys at an age when they're forming their identity and their character and who they're going to become, around 11, 12 years old. And if we can get our young men to understand women's rights and to have respect and dignity for women and girls, as Ms. Wilkins just said, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And I think we can affect greater change with the issue of demand for sex trafficking if we can reach young boys so that they're growing up and they can become part of the solution and not part of the problem. Then the third thing that our curriculum does in communities, it empowers young people. Booker T. Washington said, if you want to lift up yourself, lift up someone else. And our young people, by working on this global issue that's greater than they are, and they're seeing that there are millions around the world that are facing greater challenges than they are in their own lives, in their own communities. And when they can work on this global issue, we're finding that it uplifts them, it empowers them, it enlightens them, it engages them, and they're becoming better global citizens. Because of my unique connection to history and my lineage, we're able to get into schools. We have had no trouble getting into schools all across this country. We've been in thousands of schools with our curriculum, and that's because when you're talking about these very sensitive subjects, we're talking about slavery, legalized state-sanctioned slavery, which brings in other topics of racism. We're talking about sex trafficking. These are very, very prickly subjects to bring into middle schools and high schools. So when you can wrap it within the context of history and show that slavery has always existed and there's this continuum that it still exists today. You know, Holly made a great point just a minute ago that people will ask me all the time the same thing. Why don't they run away? Why don't they, I mean, if they're free to kind of move around, why aren't they running away? And we can always use examples of history to show the commonality, to show the parallels. For instance, I talked about earlier, Frederick Douglass was a slave in the big city of Baltimore. He was free to move around the city. His master would make him go out to the shipyards and work and bring his money back every single day to his master. And he could move around, he could interact with black children that were free, he could interact with white children, and this is how he taught himself to read and write. But yet, it took him 20 years to get the courage to run away from his situation. And it just shows you that here was a brilliant man that we know, everything that he meant to this country, but as a boy, he was enslaved in his mind. He might not have physically had chains on him, but, and we can look at the same thing today with, victims of today's slavery, that they are controlled by their mind, they're physically abused, just like Frederick Douglass was in many cases. So we want to use history to show the parallels of today's slavery, and I think it helps people to really kind of put it into context how this can still exist in our world today.
Mr. Morris, you stated that the best way to end slavery is through education. Please tell us more about that.
When Frederick Douglass learned his ABCs, he had that taste, and his master took it away from him. His master said, education will unfit him to be a slave. And we believe that education will unfit a community to allow slavery to thrive within its midst. When a community is educated and comes together, all of the various aspects of the community, whether they be service providers, law enforcement, organizations that are working on the ground to rescue victims and restore them, rehabilitate them. Education is key to everything. And believe it or not, when we talk about education in the human trafficking movement, we're not talking about classroom education. This is traditionally how it's been in the past. Education has been educating the public with billboard campaigns and PSAs. What we're talking about is going right into the classroom and educating those that are most vulnerable. Now, this is not just for underserved areas. We're also working with schools all around the country that work on these projects, like the Globalized 13 project I talked about earlier, which is to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the 13th Amendment, which happens in December 2015. So education will make it possible that you guys can educate yourselves, and then you go out and educate your communities. We have schools all across the country that are winning awards. They're speaking at the UN, they're going on the radio, they're going on TV, they're writing op-eds for their local papers. You can take your passion, your talent, and our curriculum ties into every discipline, even mathematics, for instance. We have a statistical dilemma because this is an underground illegal activity. We really don't know how many slaves there are in the world today. There are estimates of 27 million. There was an estimate that came out a few months ago of 29 million. I've heard as low as 12 million, and what that means is we really don't know. We knew in the 19th century that there were 4 million slaves freed, but today we don't know. So you guys that are interested in mathematics, and you get interested in this topic at the age that you are now, we would hope that as the next generation of leaders, you can use your brilliant mathematical intellect to figure out how we can solve this statistical dilemma. That's one example of how this curriculum can tie in with a subject or discipline that you probably never would have thought it could have tied in with.
Now before we go to the additional questions, do you think you could pull your PowerPoint up and show the new students who just arrived your family lineage and how they were connected?
You may have to talk a second.
Yes, I can talk. Well, we might, instead of me talking, we might just prepare. Naim, why don't you talk about some of the, I have a couple other questions about internet safety as well. And how can the students better safeguard themselves against online predators?
Okay, when it comes to online predators, or as we like to say in our office, online predation, there are a lot of things that you all can do. How many people know what Snapchat is? Yes, so, the adults are looking at each other like, I don't know what that is. Snapchat, how many people know what Ask FM is? Okay, we know what Ask FM is. Everybody knows what Facebook is, everybody knows what Twitter is. So, this is gonna sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but you all really do need to work on not putting your personal information on these sites. I cannot press it enough. And see, some of you think, oh, I don't have my real name up there. I have cute girl 25. I don't know what that means. You think that just because you don't have that, but okay, let's just say, I do this a lot. So let's just say that you say, go Bulldogs, can't wait for soccer practice. That's fine. If I think you're cute and I'm a predator, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pretend to be a parent and say, hey, what time does soccer practice get over at Southeast Raleigh High School? Because the only high school that has a Bulldog mascot in Wake County is who? Southeast Raleigh High School. I got you. I have no name. I don't really have, I don't have an address, but I have a face, and you gave me 2 sentences. When people from Facebook and from Twitter and from Snapchat and from Ask FM walk into courtrooms, they walk in with their heads held high. Do you know how they walk out of courtrooms? They walk out of courtrooms with their head held high. And the reason why they do that is because these websites are templates. Anybody know what a template is? There you go, a few of you, some seniors do. That's just where you plug stuff in. These websites are blank and vacant until you fill in the blanks. So when your parents are upset saying, oh, they shared this information, or they gave out this, Facebook didn't give out your information, you did. Facebook didn't put your picture up there, you did. How many people right now, you say you knew what Snapchat was, right? How many people do you think have committed suicide due to Snapchat, and it's only been around since 2012? Any numbers? 36 in the southeastern United States. 42 in the northeastern part of the United States, 63 in Australia. Individuals are getting picked on and getting poked at, and you know what they decided to do? They decided to take their own lives. That's what's happening. We've all heard of Megan Meyer. We've had cases here, right in North Carolina. Just in Chapel Hill, we had a young boy decide to hang himself. They said he hung himself from a bunk bed. I thought to myself, how small do you have to be to hang yourself from a bunk bed? You gotta be under about 5 feet tall. He was 9 years old. We cannot continue to use this internet as a way to put our own information out there, because people will use that information against you. They'll either use it to find you, they'll use it to pick on you, or they'll use it to make sure that you do something to yourself. So these are some of the things. Do not put your personal information. I can go over a myriad of things, but the best thing for you all to do is safeguard yourselves. Do not put any kind of personal information out there, because I promise you, these people don't have anything else to do but to look for you. That's all they have to do. All day.
And just to add to that, they know what they're doing too. They know how to prey on the most vulnerable. I was at a conference once where this internet safety person was able to, through geotagging and Foursquare, be able to find. Did you want to talk about that?
No, go ahead. Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah. That you a lot of times on Facebook will say, I'm at this pizza place right now, and you'll tag the friends that you're with. If a predator is preying on one of your friends, and you're telling that predator where you are, to the location, and who's with you, and then they always know where you're going to be. It may be a place that you're frequenting all the time, so they can go directly to that place based on the information that you're providing and sharing. Did you want me to? This, for those of you that were not here earlier, the question I always get is, how are you related to Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington, when they weren't related? So I like to show this family tree whenever I start presentations to make the connection, but it happened on my mom's side. And if you see at the top here, Frederick Douglass was born in 1818 and passed away in 1895. He had 5 children. I descend through his youngest son, Charles, who had a son whose name was Joseph. That's my great-grandfather. And then his son, Frederick Douglass III, is my grandfather. And then on the other side, Booker T. Washington, 1856 was when he was born. He passed away in 1915. He had 3 children. I descend through his oldest son, Booker T. Washington, II. And then he had a daughter, Nettie Hancock Washington, who's my grandmother. So my grandparents met and got married. And when my mom was born, Nettie Washington Douglass, she united the bloodline. She was an only child, so I have the honor and privilege of being the first male to unite the bloodlines of the family. So that's how the 2 families came together, and that happened in 1941.
Anything else you'd like to share with the students that just arrived?
What I always want young people to understand when we're talking about empowerment and challenges is that all of us descend from great people. I happen to descend from 2 people that are famous that we've heard of. But each and every one of you descends from somebody that made a difference. And if you were to go back and research your own family tree, your own family line, you're going to find great heroes and sheroes that made a difference. You're going to find people in your own family that sacrificed so much just for the freedoms that we enjoy, just so that some of us can even sit in the classroom and get an education, because it was illegal to teach a slave how to read and write. And I want you guys to understand that you also have greatness flowing through your veins, just like I do. and that you stand on the shoulders of those that came before you and you walk in their shoes. So when you can have that foundation at the beginning of this education curriculum, and then you go out into the communities and work on these issues in your own community, you're going out here and you are as great as Frederick Douglass is. And I just want to share one story about a student to show you how the power of this information and this history can transform the lives of young people. I visited in an elementary school in California one day, a couple of years ago, and I carried with me an original copy of Frederick Douglass's narrative that was published in 1845. And I thought I would just lay it on the table and the kids would get a kick out of seeing this old book. They said, wow, that's an old book, that's great. But toward the end of my presentation, this young man, a young boy, African-American boy, raised his hand and he said, Mr. Morris, can I come up and can I read from that book? And I said, sure, come on up. And he said, well, where should I start? And I said, well, why don't you just start at the beginning? I've never had a student ask to do this, but just start at the first chapter and just read the first paragraph. So he stood up like this, and he just began to read Frederick Douglass's narrative. And he was projecting to the back of the room, and I remember looking at him, and he pronounced every word correctly, which if you've read the narrative is not an easy thing for adults to do. But I looked at him and I thought, that's what Frederick Douglass must have looked like. And he wound up reading the whole first chapter, and then he went back to the applause of his classmates. And at the end of my presentation, his teacher came up to me and he said, I can't believe what Malik just did. And I said, yeah, I know, it was great, wasn't it? He said, no, you don't understand. He said, I've had this kid in my class for 2 years, and he's never raised his hand once to even ask a question. But there was something in what he heard about the stories of Douglass and Washington and where they came from and how much they had to overcome just to escape slavery and then to go on to affect change in the world. This type of education can transform a young person to believe that they can become great like Frederick Douglass. And we have lots and lots of stories like that where young people just have gone above and beyond what people even expected they could achieve.
This question is for Holly. In your book, I read the excerpt this morning where you tell us that you wrote about how frightened you were in middle school, the ideal of losing your best friend, Crystal. And you said you were more frightened about that than many other things. Could you elaborate on that more as a middle school, so other middle school and high school students can hear you talk about that?
I think when we're young, we hear about things in the news, assaults, kidnappings, bad things happening to people, but you always think about that as happening to other people, someone else. It's hard to imagine something like that happening to yourself until it does, or until it happens to someone that you know. So I think it's important to just try to remember that these bad things do happen, that they can happen to anybody, and that they do happen to young people. If I had the internet in 1992, I bet I would have been on it, and I bet I would have been trying to talk to anybody, just like I talked to anybody on my phone when I was a teenager. But today, I hear about so many cases of traffickers reaching their victims through Facebook and Twitter and other social media. There's a lot of gang members that will often use social media to connect with teens, and either saying that they're part of a gang and making it sound really cool, or just luring them in and then using violence to control them.
Pass it to Autumn.
I'm going to pass it out. I promise I'm not going to be a ham, but I see a few people looking at me kind of odd in the audience, and I know why it is. And it is because my story is not too different from Holly's. It's very strange.
That was my next question.
Okay, so it's not too different from Holly's. She says that she would have had the internet in like 92. Okay, so I had it in about 96 or 98. And I remember being 15 and 16 years old and thinking it was really cool to chat with men on the internet because they would send you things. So my girlfriends in high school, I know you all look at us like, well, oh, we're not that old. So I had the internet when I was your age. So I remember they were getting things. So I decided I'm going to get on Yahoo too, and I'm going to start chatting with people, and I'm going to see what I can get. It's so much easier now. You all have cell phones. This guy was able to talk me into disconnecting my old school Bell South phone. If you old, you know what a Bell South phone looks like. It's just cream and heavy. It's not like the phones that you all have in your homes now. So that it would ring late at night and he wanted to talk to me. It would wake up my daddy. And my father thought he was so smart to actually put the computer by his bedside. This guy talked me into taking it down. He wanted to send things to me, but I didn't want to give him my address. He actually showed me how to set up a P.O. box so that he could send me things. And now I have a friend go drive me. He sent me a starter jacket because they were cool back then, a pink ice cream because they were cool back then. And then I remember he stopped sending me stuff, so he started asking me really dirty questions. And I was like, I don't like him anymore. Plus, you know, I had a boyfriend that next week. That's how it works in middle school or high school. But let me tell you what the interesting thing is. I got to the Attorney General's office in 2008. In 2009, when we were really dealing with some of these child and safety issues, you will never believe whose photo came across my desk. He killed 7 girls up and down the Eastern Seaboard. Up and down. Same guy. I knew his face. It made me sick. Unlike Holly, I didn't leave. I didn't go anywhere because, I don't know, I was a little materialistic back then. I wanted stuff. But I actually could have been one of those dead girls. He had one in Georgia, one in Florida, one in South Carolina, one in Virginia. I guess I was going to be his North Carolina girl. So when you all are sitting here, and if you're being cynical and thinking that it won't happen to you, here it is. There's no reason for there to be 4 people up here, and 50% of the population sitting at this table could have been or has been a victim of human trafficking. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So that means I want you to look to your left, look to your right, and look at your own feet, and I want you to really think about the fact that you could become a victim today.
My question to you is, have you ever encountered a possible human trafficking situation?
The question is, have I ever encountered a situation that I feel could have led to human trafficking? I actually have. Had I not known the information that I do, I might have fallen for it. I was at work one day, and I work at a coffee shop. And I'm just, you know, minding my own business, being nice to customers, handing out their drinks and stuff. And this guy comes up to me, and he's like, you know, you're really beautiful. He's like, I have a photography business, and I really want you to come model for me. And I'm like, what? Who is this guy? You know, I was a little flattered. I'm like, oh, he thinks I'm pretty. But he was a creepy old man. But he hands me this brochure, and it's got like half-naked girls on it. And I'm thinking to myself, no, this is not happening. And I wish I had kept the flyer because I have some friends that are in the police back where I'm from. And I wish I would have given it to him and been like, here, this is what's happening. I need to investigate this. And I actually heard a story recently about one of the founders of a pretty big human trafficking agency. Her daughter was approached with the textbook trafficking tactics. And had she not known the information that she did, she could have been a victim. So, you know, it happens everywhere. It happens at Starbucks. I actually volunteer at a homeless shelter, and some of the guys make jokes about pimping. And I don't know if they're being serious or not. I try not to ask. But, you know, they have nice things. They have clothes that, you know, you wouldn't expect a homeless person to have. So there's always different signs and different, you know, different clues that, you know, make you think, okay, maybe I shouldn't get involved in this, or maybe I shouldn't do that. So really be careful about people on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever social media sites are out there now. You know, don't fall for every guy that says you're cute, girls. Guys, don't do that. You know, don't just say, oh, you're really cute, you want to go hang out sometime. You know, just be smart about it.
I want to say something about the word pimp. In today's culture, it's often used in a way that makes it sound cool. Like, people use the word pimp to describe something as being cooler, as being more expensive, or just better in some way. And the pimp culture in general is often glamorized in music videos, music lyrics, and I'm really depending on the next generation to change that, because it's pimps who are exploiting children, exploiting teenagers, exploiting young women, forcing them to prostitute and we're forcing them to get into sex clubs, strip clubs. It's a form of violence against women, and I hope that young women rise up against it, and I hope that young men rise up against it as well and become ambassadors for their female peers.
Kind of going along with that as well, that's something that's really been, I feel like, on my heart and popping up a lot lately. One of my friends is actually a survivor, and she's studying abroad in Malta right now. And in her dorm, they were advertising a party called Pimps and Bitches. I'm sorry for the language, but that's what it was. And she's like, I wish I could go in there and tell these people what a pimp really is. You know, kind of going along with what Holly said. If you think of a pimp as someone that's cool, maybe you should learn the definition of they're the ones that are trafficking these girls and see if you want to associate yourself with that anymore.
And I just want to add to that, I'm the only man sitting up here. And this morning I had a session, a really good session with 7 students, all young ladies. Boys, men, we've got to step up. We've got to step up, and I mean, you're young right now, and I understand, I was a teenager, I remember, but I also am a father of teenage daughters now. And one day, you may be a father of teenage daughters. And you are not going to appreciate some of the things that may happen to them that you guys may be doing in your own lives today. This is an issue that when we're talking about sex trafficking, it's supply and demand. I mean, you learn that about in your economics classes. If there's no demand, then there's not going to be any supply. And the demand, for the most part, comes from demand. So I hope that what you learned here today and what you'll be learning in the workshops later this afternoon, that you will take this into deep thought and strong consideration and step up and hold your peers, your buddies, accountable for how they talk, how they treat women and girls, and let them know that it's not cool.
I have quite a few questions here from the audience, and I'd like to ask those. Anyone can answer this question. As teenagers, how can we help our school know more about this problem, to learn more about it, to be more involved? Someone wants to know. We'll start with you, Ms. Burns.
Okay, I know I see a number of individuals from the nonprofit community that actually go out and they speak on this subject. Like I said, we mainly speak child internet safety, but that does not mean that the Department of Justice does not have resources. We have 3 different components. That's the Office of the Attorney General, that's our legal services, the SBI, and we have a Justice Academy. Our SBI actually is the lead task force on internet crimes against children. So what they do, they actually investigate these crimes along with 135 other local law enforcement agencies right here in North Carolina, and they help push these things through court. So one thing that we want you all to understand is, just because I can't come to your classroom and talk, that does not mean that an SBI agent that has been trained along with me and some other officers cannot come to your school. That does not mean that we haven't trained someone in local law enforcement. Wade County has many ICAC officers. They come to the school, they do a great job. I know it because I beat it into them. Number two, as far as our office goes, is the outreach component that I have. But we are working on some things. For some of the teachers in the audience, we have booklets. We have plenty of booklets right here that explain how you can protect your students. Parents, we have booklets and videos for you entitled What I Don't Know Can Hurt My Child. So you can get those things from me. And the last component is our Justice Academy. Our Justice Academy trains local law enforcement and they train the SBI, and they do get hours on human trafficking, as well as the people who give the calls for 911. We actually train them to be able to identify human trafficking events. So there are some things in North Carolina. Like I said, I see some people from the nonprofit community here, but in North Carolina, there are some steps that we are taking to make sure that you all are safe. You reach out to us, and I promise you we'll be able to find your answer.
I keep hammering education is the key, but it is. We all know that once we are educated about something, we start to see things around us that we had never seen before, and we start to recognize situations that could put us in harm's way. We start to recognize when our peers or our family members may be getting into a situation where they're being groomed by somebody, and this is how you can start to intervene. What we're creating in New York City we were asked by Mayor Bloomberg's office, and of course his administration is gone now, but to come in and implement an education, prevention education curriculum, because they were recognizing in New York City, like many cities, that pimps were targeting middle schools and playgrounds to recruit victims, to recruit young victims. So what we're creating in New York City is really not just education, but it's an early form of intervention, because we're getting to young people when they're thinking about running away, where they have not done that yet, and you hopefully can intervene and be able to protect that child. The other thing that we're doing along with the curriculum in New York is teacher training, so that the teachers know how to teach this very, very sensitive material, but most importantly, so the teachers know how to respond when a student discloses that they may be in trouble or somebody that they know is in trouble. And I've been in schools, lots and lots of schools, and here I am, a man walking in, and I may only be in there for 2 hours, but I've had students disclose things to me. And then the third thing, so we have the teacher training, the implementation of the curriculum, the teacher training, and then writing a protocol for response, because there really is no protocol for response anywhere in the country. So what does the teacher do once they get that disclosure? How do they make sure that that child is going to get what they need, the services that they need, and that the law enforcement is going to know how to handle this? So we're writing this protocol that we hope will become a model for the rest of the country, because right now in New York City, if a teacher gets a human trafficking disclosure, they just call 911, which is not the right thing to do. We also need to make sure that the community, the stakeholders in the community, all of the service providers, law enforcement, attorney general, all of the different entities need to work in collaboration, which we have been able to do in New York City, where these organizations previously in the past had not worked together. They were working within this very small funding space and were working independently of each other. But what we found was once we had the portal into schools to be able to get in front of students, all of these organizations wanted to be in front of students with their own curriculum. So we could partner with them. We would take their curriculum, implement it into ours, our formula of history, human rights, and the power of one. And now you see the community coming to work together collaboratively when they were not in the past.
So, like I said before, Operation Restoration was my senior graduation project, whatever they call it now. And it's not the typical graduation project. Some people were making guitars, making snacks for kids, that's cool and all. But I decided I want to do something a little bit bigger than myself. So, through that, my entire high school knows about human trafficking, continues to know about human trafficking, and asked me to go back and talk to their students who are interested in human trafficking and learning more about it. So there's that approach, do a project about it. There's something where you can choose the topic that you research on or that you educate people about. That's one way to get the word out there. Start a group. If there's people in your class or in your school who are interested in the same thing, get together, work together, do awareness events, do, candy drives, fundraisers, yard sales, whatever. Raise money for organizations that are helping victims, but also bring awareness to your fellow classmates and your fellow students about the fact that this is happening. And as I said, I'm young, I'm younger than all of them. I don't mean to say that in a bad way. But I've been in your shoes recently, and I kind of understand where y'all are coming from. So I have a Facebook page, Operation Restoration NC. Message me on there. If you have any questions, if you want to know more, if you want me to come talk to your church group or your community group or your class, whatever. I live in Wilmington, but I also have a house in Raleigh that I stay at when I'm home. So I'm here, and I'm totally cool with coming and talking to y'all. I love this. I love seeing people that have a passion and that are on fire and want to learn more about what they can do. Thank you.
The last chapter of my book, Walking Pray, is all based on prevention and advocacy. I have a lot of ideas and resources for those efforts. And because I talk about predisposing factors and community risk factors, included in my prevention and advocacy chapter is ideas for getting involved in the community and empowering other teenagers in your area. And like I said, there's a study guide on my website that goes along with the book, specifically for prevention and advocacy and awareness.
Holly, you keep that. In 1 minute, you can answer this question from the audience. What were your parents' reactions and what were they doing during your ordeal? Would you ask the question again? Thank you. I apologize.
The question was, how did my parents react?
Yes, please. And what were they doing during your ordeal?
And what were they doing during the ordeal? My parents and I actually didn't talk about what happened to me very much. But I did find out, we've started talking about it recently since the book has come out, and they did tell me that they had filled out a missing persons report when I went missing. But that missing persons report didn't go any further than my local police station. So in my book, I encourage parents and foster parents and people who run youth facilities. If a child goes missing or a teenager goes missing, you have to report that to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, because then any police station in the country can see that information. And that would have helped me because I was ultimately arrested by police in Atlantic City, and they didn't know who I was because they didn't have that missing persons report. So my parents did not react well when I was arrested. I was obviously not treated like a victim in 1992. I was charged with prostitution, even though nobody asked me if this person, tricked me into leaving my home and meeting him at the mall. So this is the reason why I speak to law enforcement as a consultant for Amber Alert and the Office for Victims of Crime. I speak to law enforcement across the country to help them understand that any teenager who is picked up is a victim, not a criminal.
Thank you.
So the question I have is, what would be the best thing to do if you think a friend is maybe a victim of sex trafficking? Definitely tell somebody. Don't keep this to yourself. Don't think that you're going to be able to rescue them, because we're 16, 17, however old. Definitely tell, if not a parent or a guidance counselor or a teacher or somebody that you feel will act in an appropriate way. Excuse me. And I know that you guys have police officers around campus. If you feel like it's a situation that needs to be addressed by the police directly, go ahead and tell them. Be like, hey, I'm concerned about, so-and-so. Is there any way that we can try to see something? But I would definitely say, as a social work major, guidance counselor is probably one of your best bets, if not your first stop, just because they can kind of meet with that person in a way that's not going to trigger any flags if they are being trafficked. If you report to a police officer, there may be some flags, they may be doing home visits or whatever, and that may tip off the trafficker that, something's up and somebody knows what's going on. So I would say guidance counselor, teacher, somebody within the school or even a parent that is going to definitely help in the appropriate way.
I have a question from a student. What do you think is the most important thing that Booker T. Washington did? Well, he did a lot of important things, but the most important thing that he did was he was the great educator. He started a school called Tuskegee Normal School and Institute in Alabama, which is now Tuskegee University. And what he did was, when we had 4 million enslaved Africans that had been freed, and with no education for the most part, and there was no plan for emancipation. There was no counseling to deal with the trauma. There was no post-traumatic stress disorder term used at that time. So you had a lot of people that were lost and were looking for education. They were looking for their families. So he understood that he needed to start with the basics of education. You couldn't really start at the higher aims in life. And he would say, how can you reach for the higher aims in life if you haven't even met your basic needs in life? So he understood that by starting at the basics, these people could pull themselves up from the bootstraps. And he would teach them sewing, dressmaking, how to grow their own crops, how to build their own school. They built their own, how to make their own bricks. So they built this school from the ground up, but what he did most importantly was he taught them something that they could do so that they could have a stake in the nation's growing economy and participate in that way. Because he believed that color would not be seen if you could do something. So for instance, the analogy that if a racist man is drowning in a river and a black man reaches out his hand to save him, that man, that racist man, is not going to care what color that hand is because he was providing something that was going to be useful for him. It's the same philosophy that your color is not going to matter if you can do something, because it's all about money, it's all about the economy. So that was his importance, I think what he did that was most important.
Okay, my question, and I'm gonna clock myself because I talk a lot. Students today will add anyone from anywhere on Facebook, Twitter, etc., without realizing the dangers. What tips can you give to students about adding strangers on social media? Don't do it. I mean, I wish I could go into some, great, long, standout thing, but one thing that you all, I realize, as much as I hate to get down on you all, your definition of no is very different, and I mean K-N-O-W, is very different from our, as adults, definition of no. You think if you saw somebody at the skating rink one time, you know them. You think if somebody sends you a Facebook page, and they're friends with somebody else from your high school, they must be okay. Or if they're friends with your pastor, they must be okay. You do not know who is on the other side of this screen. How easy is it for you to make a Facebook page? You all can do it in your sleep. How easy do you think it is to make a fake Facebook page? These individuals who are saying that they're 13 or they're 14 are really 34 and 31 and 41. So the best thing for you all to do is just do not friend anyone that you do not know. And I feel like I'm beating a dead horse when I say this. And if you really seriously, if it's a guy or a girl from another school and you think that they look cute and you just have to add them, then I encourage you to do what I do every day in my job. Do your research. If he says he goes to Brighton High School and you think he's all cute and everything, do your research. Somebody has a friend of somebody to see if this guy actually goes to Brighton to make sure that this is not an adult. And even if it is a guy that goes to Brighton High School, doesn't mean this person is safe. How many people in here have ever heard of Megan Meyer? I got one or two, somebody put his hand down so you don't know who Megan Meyer is. Megan Meyer was a young girl who was in a high school. She was in high school and she got in an argument with one of her friends. Kristen. Kristen's mother was so upset that Megan didn't talk to Kristen anymore that she made a fake Facebook page of a boy that went to another high school. And of course, y'all know y'all dated on the internet for about 2 weeks and then you broke up about it. Well, Megan was so broke up about it that she hung herself. A mother of her friend made a fake Facebook page about her, and this girl hung herself. So when I tell you, do not add people that you do not know, and if you think you know them, you need to do your research, I mean it. There are too many young people out here dying because of it. And my last little point, if you think, this is for my offenders out here, if you think it's cute to make a Facebook page because you want to intimidate somebody, guess what? This is North Carolina, and it's against the law. If you want to play with me, you want to play with the local law enforcement, try it. In the state of North Carolina, we were the first state and the only state to actually protect teachers and school personnel from cyberbullying. So if you think it's cute to pick on the custodian, try it. You think it's cute to put a picture of your teacher on a naked body, try it. You think it's cute to pick on your principal, try it. I promise you, you'll have a bad day. And last but not least, if you think it's cute to send these photos of your friends around here, how many people think it would be cute to be on the sex offender registry? You'll sit on there for 11 years, and if you think I'll bat or you think I'll care, you're wrong. So last but not least, I want you all, don't add these people, don't share these photos. As soon as you distribute a photo of somebody else that is under the age of 18, you distribute child pornography. As soon as it happens. How many people think that they can go to college if they're on the sex offender registry? How many people think they can get a job? How many people think they can get a loan? How many think they can get a home? You can't get any of those things. It's a young girl right now in Rocky Mount. She sent pictures of herself. She was 17 years old. They put her on the registry for 11 years. She'll be 28 when she gets off. She did not get any of her scholarship money, and she recently found out that she will not be going to any of the colleges that she decided to go to. We are taking this very seriously in North Carolina. Last but not least, like I said, do not add people you do not know, and do your research.
Wow. This is the conclusion of our event today. Yes, you did. You scared us all. So good. My goodness. Our goal for this event were to engage you in an interactive history lesson, empowering them to overcome obstacles, to build awareness about modern-day slavery, to empower youth on how to effect change in their own communities. One of the things we hope that you'll take back as a tool is that the recruitment strategies include, but are not limited to, scouting in malls, schools and sporting events, peer recruiting, and technology. It is critical for children, parents, and community members to be informed and to have the tools to identify red flags and decreasing their vulnerability. Slavery exists because we allow it to exist. Thank you so much. And before you leave, thank you. We want to thank all the teachers who took time out of their schedule. We realize that this is a busy time. We had a lot of snow days, and you could have done so many other things. But I hope we did exactly what you were looking for, to inform you and to engage you. Thank you so much for taking time out, all the travel that you had to do.